Tonight on Reporting Scotland, tributes for two men who died after fire broke out at a luxury hotel on Loch Lomond. Local people have been giving their reaction.
Oh, we're shocked, we're sad, very sorry for the people the families and the people involved in that.
I think the community feels it, yeah, it's horrific.
Also on the programme, Lothian's accident and emergency units record the worst waiting time figures since the targets began. A Pakistani man who murdered his Glasgow-born wife is jailed for life at the end of a 4-year fight for justice. A council warns parents the teacher staffing crisis is so bad, some schools may have to partially close. And as Jack makes it 10 in a row, we'll bring you Scotland's favourite baby names. Good evening. Two men who died after fire swept through a Loch Lomond hotel were on holiday from the London area. Fire investigations continue at Cameron House Hotel to determine the cause of the blaze which broke out yesterday morning. Aileen Clark reports.
Today, part of this luxury hotel stands in ruins, only the smoke-stained stonework still hinting at its former glory. Firefighters still standing by in case of flare-ups. It has emerged on social media that the two men who died were Simon Midgley and Richard Dyson, thought to be from the London area. Their own social media profiles showing how they'd been enjoying their trip to Scotland and taking in the sights before they both fell victim to the fire that erupted in this Lochside hotel yesterday morning. Today in nearby Balloch, as people prepare for Christmas, their thoughts here very much with the families of the men who died.
Everyone that's local, I think it has actually affected them because it's, you just don't expect that to happen, and it's such a bad time of the year.
Oh, we're shocked, we're sad, very sorry for the people the families and the people involved in that. Very sorry for all the people at Cameron House, the people who work there. It's an awful thought.
There are all sorts of questions that people want to know, but I don't suppose they'll know for some time now.
In nearby Alexandria, a local minister, more used to happy occasions at Cameron House conducting weddings, found himself instead yesterday morning comforting shocked guests who fled the blaze.
There certainly was degrees of trauma. Some had really escaped with virtually nothing. One man came out in his underwear and said if I'd gone back in for a pair of trousers, I wouldn't be here. Another woman just grabbed the baby and the changing and moved out.
As smoke and flames swirled around the hotel yesterday, firefighters guided a honeymooning couple from Worcestershire to safety. One firefighter carrying the most precious of cargo, their baby son Jimmy. That rescue and the efforts of others on the scene being praised today in a statement from the director of Cameron House, Andy Rodger, who said everyone associated with Cameron House Hotel is still coming to terms with the events of yesterday, and we are all hugely conscious that the two people tragically lost their lives in the fire. Their families and friends are foremost in our thoughts as we cooperate fully with the investigation teams to try to establish the circumstances surrounding this terrible incident. The emergency services were on the scene long into the night, and I cannot praise their efforts highly enough, he said. They are true heroes. There were more than 200 guests evacuated from Cameron House yesterday morning. The hotel says they've been helping them make travel arrangements to return home or continue on with their holidays.
Well, let's go to Aileen, who's still at the hotel. Aileen.
There's a really sombre mood in this area this evening. You know, people, as I'm sure you saw in that report, they're really genuinely upset at the loss of these two young men. What we have to understand here that this is not some flash hotel that nobody knows much about. Yes, local people work at it, but you know, they might also come in and use the gym. They also might come here for own occasions in their lives, you know, a special birthday or something like that too. So they know the hotel well, and the loss of these two young men is really being felt really deeply in the community here. The hotel themselves today praising praising the firefighters, of course, for what we showed you there. They called a heart-stopping moment when that rescue was underway, but also talking about their bravery, compassion and professionalism of the firefighters and the other emergency services, which perhaps stopped this turning into an even bigger tragedy. The investigation is ongoing, it will be complex, it will take some time, and it may well be some time yet before they actually pinpoint the cause of this blaze.
Aileen, thank you. NHS Lothian has recorded the worst performance for A&E waiting time target since the publication of weekly figures began almost 3 years ago. It follows an earlier admission that its acute hospitals had underreported waits. Well, our health and social affairs correspondent Shelley Joffrey is here. Shelley, put this in perspective for us. How bad are these figures?
They're pretty bad. The Scottish Government wants all health boards to see patients at A&E within 4 hours. But in the first week in December, NHS Lothian only saw 77% of patients within that time. That's well below their performance back in October, before the whistle was blown there on underreporting. Now, we won't know the results of the investigation and when it's concluded, whether or not the drop in performance we're seeing now is down to more accurate recording of waits, or whether it's more to do with the onset of winter flu and falls. But today's figures show that NHS Lothian clearly has a problem.
It's like an engine warning indicator light on your dashboard. Anywhere that has bad figures means there's a problem somewhere in the entire system. So somewhere within NHS Lothian, or possibly social care, treatment of acute patients is reaching some problems, and they need to look at that and try and work out where it is.
The Scottish Government says it's now working with NHS Lothian to boost its performance throughout the winter months.
And what's the situation at A&E departments across the country?
Well, clearly the winter pressure is starting to bite everywhere, but this is the first time in nearly 3 years that performance across Scotland has dropped as low as 86%, being seen within 4 hours. But just recently, Scotland was bucking the trend in A&E figures and waiting times among the UK nations, so the Scottish Government is really going to be hoping that these weekly figures are just a blip.
Shelley, thank you. A Pakistani man who murdered his Glasgow-born wife has been jailed for life at the end of a 4-year fight for justice. The family of Mumtaz Sattar engaged 3 sets of lawyers as they battled corruption, eventually taking out a private prosecution to gain the conviction of Abdul Sattar. Our Home Affairs correspondent Rival Alderson reports.
Mumtaz Sattar, born in Glasgow, a mother of 2 girls. She travelled to Pakistan in 2013 with her husband Abdul. Within hours of arrival, her body was found beside a road. He'd claimed he and his wife had been drugged and thrown out of a taxi. When he came to, he said she was dead. The authorities in Lahore closed the case, but Mumtaz's family were convinced her husband had murdered her. Abdul's business in Port Glasgow was struggling. He was heavily in debt. While Mumtaz's relatives were devastated, they nevertheless sought justice.
We're trying our best, and hopefully we can bring this matter to a close as soon as possible, with the help, obviously, of authorities in Pakistan.
But this Glasgow lawyer, engaged by the family, found corruption in the Pakistani justice system and incompetence in the police investigation. He travelled to Pakistan to launch a private prosecution. At the weekend, Abdul Sattar was finally convicted.
We didn't trust the authorities or the police to prosecute this case correctly, so we had to take the drastic step of instructing a private prosecution team. And I have to say that we went through 3 sets of lawyers to eventually get to this stage. It has been an extremely long and heartbreaking journey for the family, and I pay tribute to their courage and their perseverance for having seen this through.
Abdul Sattar, who smirked in court during his trial, must serve at least 25 years for murder and then a further 14 years with hard labour for other offences. Mumtaz Sattar's family say they've finally achieved justice for her and can now begin to mourn properly. Rival Alderson reporting, Scotland.
Plans to set up a new social security system for Scotland have cleared their first parliamentary hurdle. All MSPs backed the new bill. Eventually, more than £2.5 billion worth of benefits will be distributed by the Scottish Government. Our political correspondent Andrew Kerr reports.
A time to think of others, help for the poor and those in need. In the views of some, time for a social security system that's better designed to meet Scotland's needs. 11 benefits are being transferred. A pause for reflection on that at this church cafe.
Potentially, it could mean a better divide of resources. It all depends, I think, how it works out in practice. At the moment, we get our winter fuel allowance, which is probably more than we need. So if things could perhaps be more fairly divided up, then that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Winter fuel payments are being devolved. The Scottish Government's looking at adapting them to the climate here. And for families, more money under the Best Start grant.
With Scotland being a bit more independent from England and with the devolved powers, it's a good thing to kind of be able to give back, I guess, the community within Scotland.
I call on Jean Freeman.
In the Chamber at Holyrood, the first stage of the Social Security Bill was debated.
It is complex and it is complicated, but it is also a golden opportunity. The prize is a social security system that is there to support people who need it, when they need it, for decades to come.
But the Conservatives thought the balance was wrong, with ministers keeping too much power when it comes to how they calculate benefits.
And it cuts Parliament out of the picture to an unacceptable degree. If I were a different sort of politician, I might even call it a power grab.
The government saying they're looking at getting the balance right. From Labour, the call was not to be timid.
We really must embrace that first chance to get things right and make this the landmark legislation that the people of Scotland expect.
So there's a lot of festive cheer about the bill, with MSPs supporting it unanimously. But it will be subjected to line-by-line scrutiny in the cold light of a January day. The Carers Allowance Supplement will be the first benefit to be paid out in the summertime. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
Well, staying at Holyrood, the Scottish Labour leader, Richard Leonard, has named his front bench team with key jobs for left-wing supporters who helped him win the contest. But there are also places for those who criticised him during the campaign. Our political editor, Brian Taylor, is at Holyrood. Brian, he was elected about a month ago. Why has it taken him so long to name his top team?
It's taken a while, Jackie, certainly, but then he had a few things to deal with first. He had to deal with Kezia Dugdale, both in and out of the jungle. He had to deal with Alex Rowley, the former deputy leader of the party, who protested his innocence against a claim of harassment. That claim has now been discharged. Mr. Rowley stood down as deputy leader. He's back in the party, but he is not in the top front bench team. Neither is Kezia Dugdale. So who is? Well, there are places for key left-wingers who backed Mr. Leonard during the contest. Neil Findlay, Monica Lennon and Elaine Smith joined the top front bench team. But it should be said that balanced against that, there are 7 retaining their place in that top team, including Anna Sarwar, who stood against the winner, and also Jackie Bailey, who was very critical of the left during the contest. Now, I spoke to Richard Leonard just shortly after he named the front bench team, and he was adamant he had a winning combination.
The team I've put together is designed both to form a strong opposition to the SNP, but also to carve out a distinctive Labour alternative. And I think what we aim to do over the next few years is to put out a strong, distinctive Labour message. And I think these are the people that are going to lead that.
So, Dave, so Brian, what are his main challenges ahead?
Well, there's always the economy. Labour has to define what it means when it talks about progressive taxation. They've been sharply critical of the SNP, but have yet to put forward their own details. That'll certainly fall to Richard Leonard, but also to James Kelly, who's the new finance spokesperson. Labour has to sort out what its position is on Brexit in general terms, but also particularly as it affects Scotland. That's one that falls to Neil Findlay. I asked him about it and he was not giving very much away at the moment as to whether they go down the road of the single European market support or whether they go for early and instant Brexit. But above all of these challenges, the party in Scotland has to look like it is winning again.
Brian, thank you. It's 17 minutes to 7, a reminder of tonight's top story. 2 men who died after fire broke out at a luxury hotel on Loch Lomond have been named as holidaymakers, Simon Midgley and Richard Dyson. And still to come, Scotland's favourite baby names are revealed and Jack makes it 10 in a row. A charity says 2 in 5 people believe they'd struggle to pay their rent or mortgage within weeks of losing their job. Street Soccer Scotland says even a small change of circumstances can send people into a spiral towards homelessness. Ken MacDonald can tell us more.
These people spent a night last weekend sleeping on the streets in Edinburgh to raise awareness of homelessness. It's a subject which worries many. A charity says the survey it commissioned suggests 41% of Scots said that if they lost their job, they could be homeless within 2 paydays because they couldn't afford their mortgage or rent. More than half didn't know what they'd do if that happened. 39% of young people aged 16 to 24 believed it was likely they could face homelessness. Robert Hare was a professional footballer, but after a spell in jail and a relationship breakdown, he lived on the streets for a year. It illustrates how quickly lives can change.
You're only a day away, and never take it for granted what you've got, because it can disappear in an instant. It's that close and it's that severe that it can happen in an instant. Your world can turn upside down without you even realising.
The charity Street Soccer Scotland organised the Homeless World Cup in Glasgow last year. It regards football as a way of putting structure into the lives of homeless people, combating the stigma many feel they're subjected to by passers-by.
I've been homeless, you know, and I remember what the stigma felt like when you were homeless. You know, you were cast as someone different, you know, and I think what the survey helped show that it's not us and them, it's us. You know, it could happen to any of us, and I think when difficult times happen, it's up to us all to kind of gather round and support one another.
The charity is to stage street soccer matches in Glasgow and Edinburgh on Christmas Day, further to highlight the problem, with rough sleepers offered a meal and a present. Kenneth MacDonald, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Murray Council has written to parents saying that their teacher staffing crisis is so bad, some schools may have to close on certain days. The local authority has struggled for years to attract teachers to the area, but now a combination of factors has brought the situation to a head. Similar problems are playing out in other parts of the country, as Craig Anderson reports.
They've tried advertising here and further afield. They've even offered free housing. But for years, Murray Council's found it difficult to attract teachers to this part of the North East. If you're the parent of a primary school child here in Murray, then you'll have had a letter like this. It says that the situation of teacher shortage has got so grave that some schools may have to consider partial closure. For example, a year group or class may be asked not to attend on specific days. It really has got to crisis point here.
Because we are short of teachers, supply teachers in particular, we felt it was prudent to let any parents know that it's possible that we may not be able to staff a class, and you cannot leave children in charge of anything other than a fully qualified teacher.
This Forest school is one of those with particular staffing issues, but the idea that primary kids might have their education rationed has horrified parents here.
I don't know what the reasons are behind it. Is it just because they're short-staffed? And yeah, it's just scary as a parent.
Well, they're under extreme pressure, the teachers, aren't they, from all sides. You know, they've lost the support. A lot of the support staff, or the PE staff are on the agenda to get cut as well.
I think it's ridiculous. Yeah. They should get it sorted, to be honest.
And just this week, Highland Council decided that 19 pupils from Strathconnan School would be moved temporarily to another one because their 2 teachers were leaving.
What I'm worried about is they're using it as an excuse to shut the school, and this really worries me. A school with 19 students in it at this time in a remote school is a great number of people in a remote valley like Strathconnan.
In places like Murray, closing tiny schools could help ease the teaching shortage, but that's even more unpalatable to parents than the current crisis. Craig Anderson reporting Scotland for us.
Well, let's go to our education correspondent, Jamie McIver. Jamie, can a council simply close schools in this way?
Well, it would certainly be a break in the spirit of the rules, Jackie. Now, just to explain the rules as they are at the moment, the schools have to be open for 190 days a year, but the law doesn't actually stipulate what the actual school hours should be. But tonight, a very clear warning from the Scottish Government that they would take a dim view of any attempt to cut school hours.
The government has powers that it can use, we've not used up until now, to specify the length of the school day. Now obviously we're keen to work with local authorities to make sure that we have in place all of the teaching contingent, teaching resources that we require to deliver high quality education for young people. And of course, as a consequence of all of our efforts, we have over 540 more teachers in our schools in Scotland this year than we had last year.
Now, the Scottish Conservatives say that the situation in Moray could have been avoided all along. This is all down to the issue of just who from outside Scotland is able to register to teach in Scotland.
There were people in 2015 who were willing to teach in Moray schools. As I say, that problem is now being addressed, but had we had that at the time, perhaps the shortages wouldn't be as extensive as they are now. But I think the most important thing is that if people are fully qualified in another jurisdiction and obviously have a very good track record as a teacher, I think it's a great pity that more progress hasn't been made to encourage these people to come to Scotland to ensure that they're part of the workforce.
Now, teacher recruitment is an issue in a number of rural areas all across Scotland, Jackie, but this very clear warning from the Scottish Government that whatever interim solutions may need to be found in some areas, cutting hours simply won't be acceptable.
Our education correspondent Jamie McIver there, thank you. A man from Dumbarton, Jacktar Singh Johal, has been remanded by India's anti-terror agency in connection with the murder of a far-right political leader. The National Investigation Agency, which examines cases posing a threat to national security, has taken over inquiries from the Punjab police relating to the killing of Hindu leaders. The 30-year-old has been in custody in India since the beginning of November. The new chair of the Scottish Police Authority says she wants to ensure it conducts its business in a transparent way. Former MSP and Health Minister Susan Deacon has chaired her first meeting after being appointed last month. The Chief Constable of Police Scotland is currently on special leave, and an Assistant Chief Constable has been suspended over separate allegations which both men deny. It's emerged that Britain's biggest warship, the aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth, is taking on hundreds of litres of seawater every hour because of a leak. BBC Scotland has learned the section of the vessel affected by the leak was built by BAE Systems on the Clyde before moving to Rosyth in Fife, where the ship was assembled. The Royal Navy said the warship is scheduled for repair and the fault would not affect the programme of sea trials. Now, it's topped the charts for a decade now, and Jack is once again the most popular boy's name in Scotland. For girls, Olivia pipped Emily to top spot for the second year in a row. Well, the National Records of Scotland has also revealed a long-term trend in the variety of names we're choosing for our children. Lisa Summers can tell us more.
Kitty, it's not you. Blair, it's not you. Megan, it might be you soon. Jack, yes, for a decade now, you claim the #1 spot for boys. Olivia tops the girls' charts for a second year in a row.
I named him after my granddad, and I thought that it was an old-sounding, quite strong name. It's easy to, you can't shorten it anymore, so it's a good name, I thought.
Little Jack was born 4 months ago, but when this whole craze started, this Jack was born.
Tell me what you think makes the perfect Jack.
Quite funny, cool, sporty and really good looking.
Over 49,000 babies were born in Scotland this past year, but while Jack has a strong hold at the top of the boys' charts, Olivia held on by only a small margin as the most popular girls' name.
So we've got Big Jack and Little Jack, 10 years at the top of the most popular boys' names. But we are seeing ever-increasing numbers of baby names in Scotland. Hey, gorgeous.
There were nearly 7,000 different names registered in Scotland in 2017.
In 1975, 1 in 5 girls and nearly a third of all boys would have been given a name from the top 10 names. And in 2017, that's fallen to 1 in 7 for girls and 1 in 8 for boys.
So unique in variety might be up there soon, but for now, Jack and Olivia stay at #1. Lisa Summers reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
And Christopher is a lovely name too. See, I'm being nice to you.
You are, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Hello there. Well, the week before Christmas, but the weather doesn't feel particularly festive, really, does it? And it's all down to the jet stream, this fast-moving ribbon of wind way up in the atmosphere. We're on the mild side of it, if you like, this great big tongue of mild air stretching all the way up towards Scandinavia. At times, the cooler air sort of edging its way in, but then the mild air wins out again. So generally a mild few days ahead, pretty cloudy at times, some outbreaks of rain and some sunshine in the mix too. Certainly through the course of this evening and overnight, it will be fairly mild for most of us and generally fairly cloudy. Some outbreaks of rain in the northwest, heavy at times, but as they move their way south and eastwards, turning fairly light and patchy. Breezy with it, and then the winds fall light. So a cloudy night, a few spots of rain, mild. Central and southern Scotland, 8, 9, 10 Celsius. Further north, there will be some clear skies by dawn, so the temperatures will fall away here, especially so in the countryside. So tomorrow, for central and southern Scotland, well, a cloudy start. Further north, some early spells of sunshine, and then improving for the central belt in the south as well. The sunshine coming out. At the same time, you'll notice a few sharp showers in the north and northwest. So, mid-afternoon, dry, some brightness around and mild, 9, 10, 11 degrees. Further north, a little bit cooler. Now today we were into the teens in places, so not quite that mild tomorrow, but still mild really for the time of year. 8, 9, 10 Celsius, a few sharp showers there across the Highlands and Islands and in towards the Northern Isles, and still a breeze around northern and western coast from the southwest. Fresh, no more than that. Rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, little in the way of change. Still a number of showers in the northwest. Elsewhere largely dry with some clear skies. It will be a cooler night than this coming night. And then looking ahead, this is Thursday. High pressure nearby. Dry, settled conditions. A little bit of cloud, a little bit of sunshine. Most of the clouds in the west, most of the sunshine further east. And this is one of those days where the cooler air just starts to win out. So temperatures back down really to where they should be for the time of year. Similar again on Friday, but then as we head through towards the weekend, that mild air returns and temperatures return to double digits. And across the northeast, once again, we could be into the teens. That's the forecast for now.
Dreaming of a warm Christmas. Thank you very much, Christopher. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. 4 men have been arrested in South Yorkshire and Derbyshire after disrupting a suspected Islamist terror plot. It's thought it was being planned for Christmas. More than 100 people were evacuated from their homes. Tributes have been paid to a couple who died in a fire at a luxury hotel in Loch Lomond. Simon Midgley and Richard Dyson, believed to be from London, were staying at Cameron House Hotel when the blaze broke out yesterday morning. And Lothian's accident and emergency units record the worst waiting time figures since the targets began almost 3 years ago. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next main bulletin is at 10:30. Until then, from all the team, good evening.